focusing on experience sharing, best practices related to climate change, and disaster risk reduction. The session is going to be chaired by Dr. Shahenaz Jadeja, who will also be moderating it. And for this session, we have two speakers, Dr. Jincy Roy, who is the Executive Chief Officer, Water and Sanitation Management Organization, and Mr. Varun Jhaveri, who is the advisor for Y20 India 2023. So, can I request Dr. Jincy Roy? And Dr. Varun Jhaveri. They will be joined by Dr. Archana Soreng, who is the member of UN Secretary General of Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. Um, so while okay, so I'll request Dr. Shahenaz to take over and conduct the third session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to everyone. I see very less faces. I hope everyone has enjoyed the lunch, and I think people are coming in. But because of time constraint, we have to start with the session. In the morning, we had really insightful two sessions, and we're looking forward for another fruitful one. The theme of the session, the plenary session number 3, talks about experience sharing, best practices related to climate change, and disaster risk reduction. So we have 3 panel members who are going to be speaking on it. I would like to call upon Dr. Jincy Roy. She's already there in the dais, the first left from my side. She started her career as assistant collector in Botad. Recently, she was awarded as the best DDO on Good Governance Day for her exceptional service in Narmada, one of the aspirational tribal districts of Gujarat state. She is currently posted as CEO in WASMO, which is basically Water and Sanitation Management Organization, since October 2021. Next, we have Mr. Varun Jhaveri. Uh, he serves as an advisor to the Y20, which is basically G20 youth body, and he was also the head of Indian delegation to Y20 for 2022-23. By education, he is an MBA graduate from IIM Ahmedabad and was trained at the University of Chicago. Lastly, Dr. Archana Soreng, I think most of you all have met her in the morning also. She belongs to the Khadia tribe from Odisha, India. She's one of the 7 members of United Nations Secretary General Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, launched on 27 July by the United Nations Secretary General himself. Without wasting much time, I don't want to take away the time of the speakers. I think I request the speakers to introduce themselves about your work area. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I am extremely glad to be here this afternoon. It seems like yesterday that I left Vadodara because I started my career in 2014-15 from here. I was posted as a probationer back then in Vadodara, and Vadodara, as you know, happens to be the cultural capital of Gujarat. And to be in the center of the bustling youth of Vadodara in such a prime cultural center is indeed a privilege and a rare honor to me. Today, I work as CEO, Water and Sanitation Management Organization in Gandhinagar. And WASMO as an organization was established way back in 2002. Our main objective is to provide safe and sustainable drinking water to rural areas. We mainly focus on in-village water supply. You know why there is a lot of talk about water? Our earth has been blessed with a lot of water, but the sad fact is that only 3% of it is fresh water. And out of that, the good news is 2.5% is unavailable for use. Only 0.5% of fresh water is available for all activities of mankind. Our Earth is revolving and rotating, and at the same time, it is also evolving. And the direction in which Earth evolves also depends on the direction and evolution of the human minds. Therefore, we need to use water judiciously. Speaking about the sustainable development goals, we all know that water and sanitation, and along with it, climate change and climate action happens to be one of the key priorities. And to achieve this, we need to be water smart. And by water smart, I mean we need to know how to utilize the available resource. We need to know how to reuse and regenerate the available water sources to us. Today, if you see after 2000, 134% of all water-related extreme events in the form of floods have occurred, and there has been a 29% rise in drought cases. The number of flood-related extreme events of water are mostly reported from Asia, while the drought events have been mostly in Africa. So you see why there is a need for international collaboration in this front. Also, with increased population, increasing urbanization, and with a scarce resource which is overtaxed, so to say, there is a number of conflicts. There is a rise in conflicts. And with water sharing, judicious use of water, conflicts can also be put to rest. With increasing sea level, and increasing salinity of water, the amount of fresh water available to the humankind is also showing a downhill trend. There are nations, there are areas in India where desalination plants have come up, but these type of methods are usually very costly, very time consuming, and so to say, it is a complicated system of network. Whereas what we can do to save our planet is that we can adopt natural methods. For example, we have wetlands. Humankind needs to see that the wetlands are not destroyed. They act as natural reserves of water. The mangroves along the coastal areas also serve the same purpose. So they also act as effective carbon sinks, which in turn helps us in reducing the drastic effects of climate change. I'm sure as youth, most of you must have heard of the term called climate resilience. Climate resilience happens when inadvertently, because of the increasing population, all other activities of man, we end up destroying a lot of resource, but at the same time, we show resilience in rebuilding it. So that is exactly the need of the hour. We need to rebuild the existing water resources. And for that, we need to focus more on the surface available water rather than extracting the groundwater, rather than burdening the already overburdened system with illegitimate as well as with all kinds of inadverse types of extraction of groundwater. We need to find out ways like drip irrigation where we already conserves the available surface water to us. We can also become more water smart if we meter the amount of water that each household utilizes. And that is exactly the concept that WASMO has come up in recent years. We not only provide household tap connections and water to the households, but also have a metering system in place. This is just to see that the consumers are available of the amount of water that needs to be consumed, and at the same time also ensure an equitable distribution of water resources. Water, climate change, and health are also closely related. There are reports which states that if we become water smart, we can save the lives of about 360,000 infants per year. And you ask why and how? That is because most of the deaths under 5 years of age in children are attributed directly to waterborne diseases like cholera. Once we become water smart and do not corrupt the existing water systems, we learn how to save human lives. Similarly, because of the salinity in water, there is an increased risk of damage to the aquatic ecosystems. And this, in turn, affects the food cycle, the aquatic water cycle, and this also leads to excessive algae formation. And algae formation, as you all know, directly impacts the health of the ecosystem, and in turn, it has also claimed a lot of human lives as well. I think, in the beginning, somebody had cautioned me as to the receipt of a card if I overstep the time, and I think this is an yellow card for me. Okay, but then as all good things have to end, of course, so does my speech. And thank you for the organizers to invite me here, and thank you for a very patient listening. Thank you.
We want to definitely hear more from you, but during the question answer session, ma'am. Sir, please.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Varun Jhaveri, and I serve as an advisor to the Y20. Well, one of the most difficult things to do is actually, interact with audience, and that too after a very fulfilling lunch session. This is a time when the food has just gone in, and people generally gravitate towards taking a quick nap. I also used to do it, so I'm also one of the culprits here. Uh, I would rather keep it short, and then probably the intent behind having this particular consultation is to hear more from you. The young folks who are sitting. The idea is to have more of an interactive session. I thought that probably I will just speak for 5 to 6 minutes, share some of the experiences that I have seen. So it's been around 13 years that I have been working in the space of public policy, worked with government. I worked in the healthcare space, worked in the climate change space, but the first thing that really made me drift towards working with the government, working in the intersection of policy and governance, was actually environmental protection. So before 13 years, I used to be a very young climate activist, who really started working with something called as the CEE and Tunza. So that was a network of young people who wanted to work in environmental protection, and from there, I went to UNEP, I worked with them, and I was, at one time, I was the global ambassador for climate change at the World Conference of Youth. So, and from there on, in the last, 10 years, I've tried working on different aspects, in some position or other on the agenda of climate change. It's a very tricky, it's a very complex, it's a very layered, it's a very multi-stakeholder, sort of an approach that is required, because it is not a very simple problem to solve for. And it is not a very quantified problem that this is, something that has to deal with numbers. It is something that requires efforts from pretty much everyone, from citizens to companies, to corporations, to governments. Everyone has to put their best foot forward if we even want to move a needle. So, some of the interesting things that I have seen in my last, few years is that just like how, fashion repeats itself, sustainability and the practices, they also repeat. And one thing that we often forget is that if we look at our history, most of the civilizations, whether it is the Indian civilization, I see a lot of my friends from Africa, I see a lot of my friends from ASEAN countries, from Japan, a lot of this civilization by far were self-sustainable. So, even before this particular panel, quite a few of you mentioned that a lot of the practices that our civilization used to do, they were done in an end-to-end manner, which means that even the waste that was generated, it was getting used, it was getting utilized in some way or the other. So it was a very sort of an end-to-end sustainable one, practice that that is, that I see often, and that I think is a big sort of is a big sort of an indicator of sustainable practices, that when I go to my home, even now, the water that we store, the drinking water, we still store them in clay pots. In Hindi, it is called as matka. And it is not a practice that you will see in other civilization, because they have something or other. And similarly, the water that we actually drink in, it is generally done in steel tumblers and not like a use and throw, or like in a plastic. But I see that a lot of this are getting shifted now. Plastic cups are coming along. There are more water thermoses. So the idea is that, can we start seeing a bit back in our history, a bit back in our civilizational practice, and we can probably get a lot of answers from there. So, to move forward, you also need to ensure that, you are also looking back. The second thing that makes me very, very, I would say, enthusiastic about this particular agenda is that if you look at the 18th and 19th century, it was the era of industrial revolution. You got better machines, the efficiency improved, workers got better wages. If you look at the 20th century, it was completely an era of digital revolution. Semiconductors, silicon chips came into play. We talk about the 21st century and the time that we are standing, you can see that in the next 5 to 10 years there is going to be a tremendous sort of a shock that is going to happen in terms of the green economy and the sustainability. And for the young people, especially a lot of you are sitting in the audience, for you to actually capitalize on this, the green skilling is something which is going to be of utmost importance. So an example, that an analogy that I can draw is that just to capitalize on technology revolution, a lot of you learn coding. A lot of you learned how to work with computers. A lot of you learned how to, really, interact with machines. Now we have, artificial intelligence, a lot of, machine learning algorithms coming up. But the idea is that the next few decades is going to be how to again restore the world, how to again infuse the green economy, how to again bring the sustainable development back in the play. And for that, the world is going to require a lot of skilled young people, people who understand what is sustainable development, people who have the right sort of skills. And that's why a lot of new skill building as well as reskilling is going to be required. And that is going to happen from an end to end, like an entire sort of the cycle chain, right from the way the goods are manufactured to the way that they are delivered, the mobility space, the infrastructure space, the services space. So it is going to be an entire spectrum. And I think this is one thing that a lot of young people should focus on. The third thing that I have been seeing a lot is the fact that even when when I was coming in, I saw a great sort of a paper presentation which has been put up. I saw a lot of interesting paper, and that brought me to focus that a lot of times the the extent of sustainable development, it resonates that you are only doing this for the planet. And it is considered as a formality to be done, just like how you have a CSR, that it's a sort of a tick mark that a companies would want to do. But one thing that needs to come into play, and there's a solid research which backs this, is that when you also go green, in the long term you are also making better economical choices. So the idea that if you are choosing a sustainable development route, whether it's for your company or for your business, at the end of the day, for a longer term, you're also going to make better margins. So it is better for your business, it is better for your companies, it's better for your corporations. And I think that is something which is very important, that how do you start considering the entire narrative of green economy in the overall global financial order. There are many options that have been tried out. There have been green bonds that have been tried out. There have been a lot of blended financing, that have been tried out. But the idea is that, we need to start thinking that when we think about a particular loan, let's say, one question that we ask is that how much is going to be the rate of return? How much are you going to, give me if I'm, investing certain money? The idea is that along with this, can we also start thinking about, if I'm investing a certain amount of money in a company, what is the type of environmental or what is the type of societal impact is my money fetching in? An example is that today when India announced a 10 lakh crore budget in infrastructure, every 1 rupee that has been spent, you get a return of 2.5 rupee. And similarly, if you actually put in a 1 rupee in infrastructure, that to a green infrastructure, there are studies which says that you can actually get a return of 4x, which is 4 rupee. And this is at a macro level. So, bringing this mainstream narrative that this is not only pro planet, but this is also pro society's economical growth. Because one thing that I also heard is that there is economical development and then there is a sustainable development. They are not two different sides of the coin. You can actually make them one side of the coin, and you can actually ensure that there is also economical development, and there is also environmental protection that is happening. And many countries, especially India, has been quite successful in that. Yeah, I will just wrap up. Again, we'll probably take more questions from you, but just to wrap up, I think one last thing that I want all of you, or rather, I want you to encourage all of you, is just doing one simple exercise. Whether it's your particular personal life, whether it's the corporations, whether it's the companies that you are working on, just try to do one small green audit, and that is pretty easy. Just think about what do you do. in 24 hours, how many, non-biodegradable, how many plastic products are you using, and just pick up 2 or 3 that you can replace. Don't be too harsh on yourself. If you become too harsh, it is not going to be sustainable. A lot of times we were like, I'm going to change the world in just 1 month. That is not going to how it works. Just it is as simple as that. Can I replace my plastic toothbrush with a bamboo toothbrush? So just the idea is that let's just do simple things. Let's be cognizant of what we are utilizing. Let's just be cognizant of what our companies are utilizing. Again, I have many examples to give, and probably we will probably discuss some of them during the Q&A session. But I think the future is definitely green. I'm sure that you would have heard a lot, but I'm pretty sure the future is green. And along with that, this is a great opportunity for the young people to engage and personally grow themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll definitely have a lot of questions from the youth coming to you. Ma'am, please.
Hello. Yeah. Johar, everyone. So, welcome back. I'll start by sharing one of my experience. So, once I had been to my field work and I was interacting with my indigenous elders, and I asked him, how is everyone at village and how's the things going on? He said, it's going on well, but we have been protesting and we have been resisting. So I was like, what happened? Why are you resisting and protesting? So then he said that there was a plantation drive in our village, and we have been protesting and resisting for that. And I was like, so what's the problem of the plantation drives? He said they had brought fruit trees. They had brought mango trees, jackfruit trees, and that's why we were protesting. I said, fruit trees, mango trees, jackfruit trees, and still protesting. So then I asked, what's the reason why you're protesting when it's a fruit trees? And then he said that if they plant mango trees, jackfruit trees in the periphery of our village, then wild animals and wild boars will come to eat those fruits, and then they will destroy our agriculture crops, which is just near our periphery of our village. And I was taken aback. And that was a huge learning for me, is that when we are making policies for the people on ground, they need to be part of the policy making process. They need to be part of the decision making process, because they are the ones who are well aware and knowledgeable that which ecosystem is beneficial for them and which trees are beneficial for them and not. And then he said, we want sal trees in our periphery, and we would be really supportive if sal tree is planted in the periphery of our village. This is an example of one region, and this can be in a different context in different region. The learning which I got from this interaction is that indigenous people, local communities, Adivasi communities, and people on ground need to be part of the decision making process, need to be in the front lines, because they are aware and have knowledge and wisdom since years. The second thing I would like to share, that when we are talking about climate action, it's really important to also understand the worldview of indigenous people, Adivasi communities, forest dwelling communities. As per the reports, 80% of the world's biodiversity are protected by indigenous people, who are less than 5% of the world population. Me, coming from an Adivasi community, in our worldview, we are not mere nature, but we are nature. Nature is a source of identity, culture, tradition, and language, unlike other community who see nature as a commercial commodity. So it's really important that we acknowledge and respect the worldview of indigenous people, Adivasi communities, local communities, and forest dwelling communities. And at the same point, it's also really important to respect and support the traditional way of living. And third, it's really important to understand and support their traditional knowledge and practices. Like if we talk about our way of living, like whether it is starting from brushing our teeth, like in our village, it's called datun. We brush our teeth. My grandparents and elders used to brush our teeth from datuns. And then going ahead, like the brooms which we have been using, I remember my grandfathers and uncle used to use water bottles from pumpkins and bottle guards because they were having cylindrical shape. The inner was used as vegetables, and the out crust was dried and used at bottles. And even now, our communities use leaf plates for having food. So they make leaf cutleries. They plug the leaves in a sustainable way and make leaf cutleries, which can be alternatives to leaf plates. So there has been numerous way of living and practices in the indigenous communities and local communities. Now the question arises, how can we support these communities? Because when we are facing impacts of climate crisis, when we are in this developmental worldview, like I would like to give an example. When we were during COVID, there was lockdown and there was restriction. And during COVID, we also had cyclones at that point of time. So for the indigenous people, it was a major critical loss because that was their season, which is the major source of income for them, which is the minor forest produce, and which not only led to the loss of livelihood but also pushed them for a vicious circle of death. And now, as we have seen, we are having unseasonal rainfalls and cyclones every year, impacting their major source of income, is also leading to migration, displacement, and it's also leading to this loss of traditional knowledge and practices and also identity. And this is a vicious circle. And that's why it's really critical to see climate action in a holistic process, which also brings down to us that how migration and displacement can also be addressed. It's really important and critical to recognize the rights of indigenous people over the land, forest, and territories. And at the end, I would like to sum up and say that the good practices which the communities have been engaging in terms of the traditional knowledge, how they have been going in terms of patrolling the forest, protecting the forest from the outsiders. There is one of the practices which is practiced in Odisha in Naigar district. I'll just quickly say it's called Thenga Pali. Thenga means stick, Pali means turn. So women of those village have been patrolling the forest every morning. They get up, take their stick, and then take the patrolling of the forest and come back after patrolling and keep the stick in front of the next household. So in that way, the stick is rotating and the responsibility of taking forest is also rotating in the village. But the question is, how much burden are we giving into women? Why are those women taking care of those forests? The women are taking care of the forest because they truly believe the forest to be part of themselves. What is the least thing which we can do is it's recognize their rights and support their traditional knowledge and practices. It's also really important to understand that climate change and climate crisis is a gendered issue. Women and girls are differently impacted with them. Even when there is cyclone, droughts, and unseasonal rainfall, women have to bear the responsibility and burden of taking care of the family and also uh, uh, bring health care to the family. So I want to emphasize and say that we all can contribute towards climate action. All we need is the desire and take action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Okay, I hope all the audience ready with the questions. We have the volunteers, please. Can we have the first question?
Hello, am I audible? My question is to Jincy ma'am. Ma'am, as you are a bureaucrat, so you implement different policies. But in case if we want to convince anybody for the implementation of these policies, so what can be the processes, or you can say the flow chart, to convince them about the different schemes or policies that are introduced by the government?
I think most of the policy decisions are in the public, are out in the public. They are either published in websites, or you can either come to the office, gather information. And right now, yes, there is the RTA Act through which you can get information related to any government office. But even before that, I think before the government formulate certain policies, we keep the citizens in the loop as far as possible. We do take feedbacks. We do circulate the draft papers to various universities, various organizations. We do take their feedback. So that is a process which we do on a regular basis. And beyond that, if a policy needs to be redrafted based on the incoming suggestions as and when required, we do that as well.
I hope the answer is well taken. Notifications are being made, ma'am, in the newspapers regarding this. Okay, so there is publications, notifications which are being definitely published. Citizens have to be a little more aware about the notifications and can be a part of the process, right? Can we have another question?
Hello, good afternoon. My question is that we are moving towards like towards one family, one earth, one family, one future. But we know that daily, on the daily basis, animals are being killed and brutally killed for the sake of eating, or for the sake of leather, or for multiple items. So what is their future? We also consider them as part of our family. So what is their future? It's in danger. Like right now it's in danger, then future it will be totally endangered species.
So I think Dr. Archana, would you be able to answer this? Yeah? Concern about animals and the protection.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you for your question. I think one of the key thing which is really important when we are talking about animals and human beings, I think it's important to see it in a holistic approach, like all the living beings and in all together in terms of earth as a whole, because I think every species and every bit element is really important to keep sustainable future and sustainable earth. And for that, I think what is really important is being mindful of it. Like our action should also be mindful that how we all are important and how all we can make sure that there is balance and harmony in this earth, because every imbalance and loss in harmony leads to drastic changes and problems. So all I want to say at this point of time is taking care of each other, respecting and valuing every particular species and this world and earth all together is really crucial and is the way forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Can we have the next question, please? Someone from the back.
Hello, myself Ashish Guruji. To Roy Madam, in hilly regions there is a drastic water scarcity. I am observing from 2012 to 2020, particularly say in a Dang area. Then another thing, what will be the solution for that water scarcity? Second one, that is in that area also only, and I am teaching in civil department polytechnic, and I am frequently asking my students, are you living in a village, and are you having a land? Then most of the students are telling me, I am not going to do the farming. So this is the common question, common answer from the students. So villages in village are becoming empty, and youth are going to city. So of course city is overcrowded and villages are empty. So is there any solution? Government is, of course, maybe something is doing, but what should be done?
I was posted in Narmada district from I think 2018 to 2020. And there happens to be one village by name Chinkuva. And people who have, and this is in I think Garudeshwar Taluka of Narmada. So people who have to reach the village have to walk to reach the top of the hill. And on the way, you can see many women, especially women and girls, who come down to the well, which is situated at the bottom of the village, take water in large vessels, climb up, then back, climb up, and then the entire time which needs to be dedicated for other activities like education or their health is wasted in this process. And I see a huge opportunity cost involved. We used to visit this village once or twice every month. Some officers used to go there because we were highly ambitious to build schools there. And even if you want to build school in an area where you need to walk on foot, you need to take brick by brick to the top of the hill to build the school. So I used to send my officers there. They used to work. I also visited it once or twice. And on the way, I see a huge opportunity cost. You are right in saying that the hilly areas have more problem. But, as a whole in Gujarat, the household tap connections are a novel aspect, especially in tribal areas. Right now, what we, as part of WASMO, has done is that we have trained we have trained operators, pump operators in various ITIs of the state. Right now, there is a feeling, at least if it is a transient feeling, I hope it carries on with proper hand holding and proper skilling. But as of now, they have been trained, they have been for the first time uh, doing something in a classroom environment, and right now there is a feeling of ownership in them. Therefore, they group together, discuss what needs to be done with the village water supply on the our headworks. And this is an activity which is carried on once every month. And we, as part of ITI training, has also distributed toolkits to them, which will become operational on a day, which will be useful for them on a day-to-day basis for in their profession. And therefore, right now they have owned up, they discuss problems. Wherever there's a problem, they bring it to the notice of the Pani Samitis in villages. Right now, I am quite hopeful that it is going in the right direction. But I do acknowledge that there is a problem in the tribal areas, especially the hilly areas, because of the undulating terrain and also because of the scattered population. As per the Jal Jeevan Mission guidelines, we provide tap water connections to a cluster of households where it is not less than 20 in number. The state government has made it more ambitious. We are providing to those clusters where at least the population is around 10 households, where we have at least 10 households. So right now I see it
I
developing
think
in a positive
I would like
stage.
to highlight the second question posted by you. Sir, if you remember the question regarding youth not being interested in farming. Yeah? So that is something very interesting. I think the people over here are also very eager to know the answer. I mean, what is your, Mr. Varun Jhaveri, if you could answer this, how do you encourage the youth?
Well, I think, the classic definition of agriculture has now started broadening, because earlier agriculture used to be only restricted to just going on the farms, cultivating crops. But if you look at, and especially if you look at the government's effort, you will see that there has been a big push in agrarian activities such as animal husbandry, such as fisheries, and all the activities which are semi-linked to agriculture, but which have a much more higher productivity. So even if you look at the current budget, you would see that there has been a huge sort of a focus. There has been a corpus which has been set up for people to actually build this type of agriculture-related problem-solving startups. Now, a lot of these startups, they need to start coming from the rural areas, because they are the ones who actually understand what is the problem. It is very difficult that a group of urban folks, they brainstorm, they validate the problem, and go and solve. The idea is that can we actually get it from this type of solution makers, the change makers from the rural belt. So a lot of initiatives like this has been done, but the more important part is that there is also a lot of focus that is happening in the green energy space in the agriculture. Like if you, especially when I go to a lot of parts of Gujarat, I had the fortune of traveling extensively. You will see a lot of farms getting covered with the solar energy. Now the idea is that how can the young people, who have been somewhat engaged with the understanding of the dynamics of agriculture, can be tapped into making the entire issue of rural renewable energy, especially the solar energy which is linked to the farms, sort of a big campaign. So I think that is a big sort of an opportunity that is unfolding, that there is a lot of knowledge that a lot of our rural youth has. The idea is that government is already shaping up a lot of opportunities, a lot of initiatives. The idea is that I think there is more awareness, there is more information, education campaigns which are required. But I think this is a big sort of an opportunity that is coming their way.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can we have another question? Yes, volunteers, please, can we have it from ma'am?
Hello. Good afternoon. My question is about what is government doing or what can government do to spread the awareness about the sustainability among the youth by the change in the current policy or the implementing new policy? Like, is there any policy which can be changed to get the optimum output of the awareness of sustainability between the youth of our country, or we should apply the new policy in order to get that output? Thank you.
I guess he means to say that how the youth is going to be involved in policy making decisions.
Well, I think if you look at sustainability and if you look at the young people getting involved, and especially on the theme of sustainability, you will see that the government has made a tremendous sort of an effort, and it has actually made sustainability a key focal point. Even if you look at the G20, one of the 7 big priorities that the government has is the sustainability. And for that, the Honorable Prime Minister, probably or quite a few of you might be knowing, is they have started a whole new mission called as the Mission Life, which is lifestyle in environment, which typically translates to how can we blend our lifestyle, both at a citizen level as well as, at the institution level, which are in alignment with the changing dynamics of environment to match the sustainability agenda. So this itself is a sort of a big commitment. If you look at some of the, the recent announcements that have been happened, big focus has been put on waste to wealth plans. The Gobardhan scheme that has come up, 500 waste to wealth plans, that would be set up. The big push that has happened on plantation of mangrove, because I understand one of the theme of this particular consultation is also, resilient infrastructure for disaster recovery. So if you look at mangrove, they act as one of the, the most strongest barriers when it comes to preventing the flood. So, a lot of belts, especially in the West Bengal and the Bihar belt, we keep hearing that every second year there are floods. So I think, there is going to be a big focus there. The third big thing that has, also been announced is with regard to the whole new green hydrogen mission that has come up. And, huge amount of investment, 19,000 crore, a budgetary outlay has been given to that. So I think overall there has been a lot of initiatives. I think what will be required and what will be exciting will be how these initiatives are complemented by the private sector. So I would love to probably see a lot of public-private partnership coming in, and I will also love to see a lot of entrepreneurship, especially spearheaded by young people coming into this particular sector and taking this particular agenda forward.
Thank you. Can we have another question from ma'am? Yeah.
Good afternoon. This is Nandini Kannan. This question is to Varun, and this is particularly related to the green skilling that you're talking about. I think that's a remarkable thing and the suggestion. So 2 specific questions that I have. One is, has any institute in the world or in India put together any set of modules for that training? A. And B, can it not be included in part of Sector Skills Council, one of the new Sector Skills Council? So that is the second one. And actually the question continues as in, can it be clubbed with placements as well with the industries who actually absorb these skilled people? MS University is a place where we already have an ICCR. We have a cell here. So can we take up some initiative as an outcome of this conference with your guidance?
No, I think the later part that you said, I think that's a great suggestion. I think when we look at this particular space, we will see that this space is something which is more of a greenfield right now, and India is the one which is actually making rapid strides. So even if you look at our renewable targets that we were planning to achieve by 2030, so our renewable target was that 40% of our energy consumption, it should come from renewable sources. So we already met it way before, like in 2022. So 8 years before we already met. So if you look at it, India is the one which is at the cusp of the opportunity of taking a pioneership and showing the world the light, just like what we did in the public digital good infrastructure. Yesterday, Singapore, a country as advanced as Singapore, it is the one which actually, forged a partnership to use UPI. When COVID struck, the type of, pace that we showed in developing the COVID platform and, giving more than 200 crore vaccination, I think a similar sort of thought leadership And a similar sort of agility is required in this area of green skilling. When the digital revolution happened, we definitely missed the bus, especially in the 20th century, because, of course, it had only been 30, 40 years, and the Silicon Valley, the entire semiconductor industry in Japan and, back in US, it was, way more mature. But I think this is the time when we start really deeply thinking that next, few decades are going to be focusing on sustainability, on green economy. And for that, there is going to be such a huge gamut of opportunities that have started opening up. I absolutely loved your suggestion that, how it can become a part of the Sector Skills Council. I think the way probably, and this is just, one of the things that I'm thinking loud, is that I think this is more of a cross-cutting thing. Whether it is health, whether it is, textiles, whether it is telecom, everywhere, you require some components of sustainability. And that's why the green skilling should actually become a cross-cutting theme. And there should be a certain incentives that should be provided both to the corporates as well as to the students when they do such type of, when they consider the greening as a part of the incentive during the placement. So I think this is, one particular focus that India should really take up. We have already done many things, like, if I have to just give one more example, the initiative that we have taken of one sun, one world, one grid, tremendous, right? Bringing all the solar countries together, thinking about having one international grid, and ensuring that, there are less leakages when it comes to solar energy. Similarly, we need to give that particular thought leadership. I think there's a lot of activism that has happened. Western countries have been very vocal. Every now and then we do have COP platforms, but I think this is the time, to take some real solid action. And I think India is very well poised to actually do that. And, G20 and Y20 really gives us a good platform, to take it forward.
Okay, thank you, sir. Due to time constraints, I can just take one last question. Yes, volunteers, please.
Myself, Simran.
Can you be a little loud?
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Simran. I want to ask the question to Varun, sir. What are the concepts of a sustainable ecological development according to green skill development in 21st century? How you see over this?
It's again the same skill development.
Yeah, basically, I think we can
cover some other question because it's almost spoken.
We'll also answer, but we can probably club some other questions.
Yes.
Very good afternoon. My question is that the tribal communities in India majorly have youth dormitories where informal learning is provided to them. Now, when schools are opened in the aspirational districts or tribal areas, the curriculum lacks the sensitivity of this traditional knowledge being passed over. So, how have the system incorporated the traditional system in their curriculum? This is for all the panel members.
Thank you for this question. I think this is a really critical question because, as you said, that the dormitories and now in terms of the educational institution, that's where as I was saying, that all the policies which we are making, even for tribal development and uplifting and promotional of the traditional knowledge and practices, needs to be rooted in the worldview, needs to be rooted in the learning system, needs to be rooted in the traditional knowledge and practices. Because if that is our basic and our foundation, then we'll be able to take it ahead and make it more helpful, more enabling. But if we miss out on the worldview, the perspective, and the traditional knowledge and practices, then we will be missing out in the major chunk. Because one of the key thing which I want to highlight is the traditional knowledge and practices is mostly in the way of folklores, songs, dance, the culture, the history is in this form, and these documentation is really critical, which will be missed out on it if we are not taking it into incorporation in the education perspective. I would also like to just chip in this when we are talking about tribal communities, is that it's also important to reflect on the concept of loss and damage when we are looking it from a lens of sustainability and climate change. Because when there is cyclones and floods, the people, those who are living in the coastal communities, are being affected, and they do get attention and support. But what about the communities, those who are living in the central area, for whom even the mere drop of rain is very problematic, because that leads to loss of agriculture, their food systems and all of it, but they do not get due attention. So I would also like to club this into this, that loss and damage, which was has been a major conversation in COP27, has to be taken into consideration, that how tribal communities are affected, how different communities are affected, and how the support can be in a holistic way.
Thank you, ma'am. We have time
Can
constraints.
can
I
I
would just
just
like to.
give a small comment on the question that was asked?
We don't have time, sir. We will definitely take. Okay, sir, take it.
Just on the green skilling very
Green
quickly.
scaling. Okay.
Currently, one of the biggest issue that I think the entire globe face is, three questions. What is green? Okay. Anyone can come and say that, okay, this is green, this is not green, but who is that particular authority which says that this is green? Second question is, the thing that you did, how much is that green? For a company which is, having a revenue of, let's say, billions, just putting up dustbins or just putting up few solar panels, is that, something that will suffice? And the third is how to increase green. So these three questions, it needs to be taught. Till now we have been taught only value education in our school curriculum. But from the formal education and getting it translated to skill development, I think that is a transition that needs to happen. A proper structured approach towards real sustainable development and achieving that particular sustainability, we would need professionals. And that is where I see a big opportunity for young people to get into this.
Since this session is mainly about experience sharing, I would like to chip in with just one or two words. That, I think basically your question was that we as administrators need to be more sensitive in incorporating the traditional knowledge, and we need to actually harvest and sustain that unbroken lineage of traditional knowledge. And for that, yes, you are right that we run ashram shalas in most of the districts, and therefore, they follow a sort of gurukulam system. But apart from that, I can tell you from practical experience that there was a huge stress on no plastic when I was posted as DDO. And most of us think of shutting down shops. Most of us think of substituting the plastics with some cardboard-based products. But what we thought about was in Narmada there was this Kotwalia community which is very famous for their bamboo handicrafts. We asked them to make bamboo water bottles, and these water bottles were distributed across the district, and young children were actually provided these water bottles free of cost from the education department. We collaborated with the education department and we provided this to children. So they carry these water bottles to school. And this was somewhat made, not very compulsorily implemented, but somewhat made compulsory on a more non-formal basis. Don't you think that kind of an intervention instills the desire in young minds to, go towards sustainability? So what we require is not the bashing up of the entire policy-making system. What we need at the moment is sensitive policymakers and sensitive administrators. For that, of course, you need to be quite resilient.
So we have a role reversal here. The speakers have left the audience with a question. So I think it was a very good session. We had a mix of three people: administrator, indigenous community, and of course the youth advisor. It was a very great session. I would just like to conclude, make a concluding remark. We are here to build a climate-conscious society with practices which practices sustainable living, keeping along our heritage, our indigenous people in along. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would just like to, yeah, thank you so much.